I am your host, Aseer the Duke of Tears. You caught us right when we was rehearsing. We was just rehearsing. We got a set tonight at Jazz It for those people that are in Miami. It's at Jazz It, which is at 1342 Washington Avenue, Miami Beach. We're performing live tonight, actually, so we're going to have to cut the show a little short. So right before we went in, me and Selena was going in on one of the songs that we're going to be performing tonight, song off the album, the soundtrack mixtape album CD, the DS18, called by Team Cordoba. The song is called The Beach, ode to DJ Premier. So again, peace, everybody. You're now tuned in live to Super Heru Radio. Thank you for holding us down. Thank you for being out there. Thank you for continuously making our show one of the highest rated, you hear me, right? Highest rated Blog Talk shows on Blog Talk, thank God. And we really appreciate everybody, really coming through and holding us down, as always. We want to say love and light to anyone who lost anybody in terms of ancestry this past week or the past 5 weeks. We definitely want to give respect also to brothers like Brother Insight, who after I think almost 2.5, 3 years doing his show, he's now going on to brighter pastures. So we wish him well in terms of graduating from the Blog Talk University, which is like the crab barrel, you know what I'm saying? Which can be like the crab barrel, how some of these people allegedly are. I wouldn't know. I try not to be too much of an eavesdropper on other people's business. But with that, we definitely want to give props to him, as well as to all of the people who don't get shout-outs, mainly you, the people, the listeners that trudge out every day and put up every day with a bunch of different ideas and viewpoints and all of that. You still have in love within yourself to see beyond certain people's shortcomings to hopefully get the message and keep it moving to the best of your ability. So all of those people who were the people who actually walked behind and walked with the greats who came in our epoch of history, like Father Allah and some of the people who don't get named in the historical annals of what really didn't happen, but what the people who say happened, because they were just the ones who were left with the pens when it all was said and done. So we definitely want to give shouts of praise to them. Also, you know what I mean, I want to address just real quick, because I'm of the ilk that people need to be who and what they say they want to be, and be who and what they should be, regardless to whether I agree with it or not, regardless to whether it's true or not, regardless to whether it empowers all of us or not. Whatever you want to be, cool. So what I find ill is how recently on this Facebook tip, these people who are what I call Afrophiles, the Afrophiles are going crazy on Moors right now, son. And being as April Fools, I'm seeing how easily that notion is spread. Big up to people like Amir Williams Bey and his nation, his queen, his peoples who put out there in that ether about the history and the true meaning of what we call April Fool's Day, in that it was a pseudo-Moorish misery day, in the sense that that's when Castile and Aragon basically violated every aspect of the capitulations of Granada and basically murdered, raped, and killed and decapitated and dismembered and raped children and daughters and all of that of the Moors. These was done by their lighter-skinned children, the Mudejars and pseudo-Moriscos, who eventually, some of them started to rebel at the horrors of that, started to rebel against the same people, Castile and Aragon, that was helping them kill all of these Moors under the El Cid demonstration. And it seems to me that same spirit, and then when they got on their ships, they started shooting arrows with fire on the ships to burn the ships in mid-sail and all of this. So this perpetual rape and killing of Moors is a traditional thing, or has become a traditional thing based upon the European and pseudo-African aspect of black culture not really rocking with us over here like that. So because the Moors in Spain were the byproduct of Moors, or so pseudo-Berbers from Africa, Berbers coming from the kingdoms that existed in the so-called Northwest Maghreb, right? But we know that Northwest, Southwest Africa is also, or is America. So in that, we understand when they say African what they're really saying, but at the same time, because I'm not identifying per se with a traditionally, let's say, African country, that somehow or another I'm disrespecting my African ancestry, when I'm one of the only people, Moors, that will say that, there is a difference between African descent and nativity. But because I am a ardent student of research, I also understand when and how these words and usages came into view and who benefits from maintaining an African superiority from us over here. In basically saying that saying that we are all from the continent of Africa, or that Africa is somehow not an allegorical code for Earth. Now, if you're saying Africa is a code for, let's say, Earth and all of that, I could agree with that. But if you're saying that the continent of Africa is the only place that my ancestors ever existed on this planet, then I would say you're a liar. You know what I'm saying? I don't care how many white man books you bring to me. I don't care how many African-American studies. You have to understand what I'm saying. There's no such thing in the world for African-Americans, but these so-called African-Americans would rather denounce you for saying that you're not that than go and invent. When you go to African-American studies, you know who's teaching it? It's black men and women teaching white kids. You know why? Because you as a black person was taken to court by white people to say that you teaching African history was exclusionary to them. So they rewired the teaching system so that way if you can't get history from a black professor because you black, and that would be in some way culturally redundant. So what they do is fill up the classes with white kids to learn about the so-called history that the slave master did, whereas black kids is in there learning European history. And you wonder why these black people are still bleaching their hair and bleaching their skin and blonding their eyes and getting cataracts and putting blue contacts and hazel contacts in their eyes all of these years. So because I'm seeing all of this heavy Moor bashing all of a sudden coming from black people, but at the same time I see psychological ops like the Grape Street Crips joining up with the KKK and things like that, I'm doing the knowledge as to who benefits from this. So when people tell me things like, oh, well, there's no such world or no such place in the world that Moors existed or whatever, even though there are countries called Mauritania, Morocco, or Moravia, you know what I mean, Umbria. It's like because people have become so daft and literal in their research that they need to see something that says something in the language that they understand it to mean. Right? So essentially what they're basically saying is that Moors are really nothing compared to Africans. So again, this is another cultural division thing that's going on, but then they're trying to flip it that Moors are doing it. Now, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing that certain Moors were not barbarous and savage, but I would go to the links right now to say that as savage I've seen Moors be with barbaristic terms in America in terms of in the recent years, what they're doing with people with paperwork and stuff like that. Like, that's barbarous and horrible. But if I was to compare it to the level of horrors that I've seen come out of Africa, perpetuated on African to African, you know what I'm saying? It is just as despicable as the so-called black-on-black crime. So if the Africans is cutting their lips off, their titties off, their breasts off, generationally hacking off people's arms and legs and stuff like that, right? How come that's not black-on-black crime? How come that's genocide? But then when you see Negroes over here, or Negrophiles, or African Americans, or whatever they want to call it themselves this new 25 years, because every 25 years these people call themselves something different. because they're not following anything from a traditional ancestral perspective. Because if you were, then you would claim the nationality of that. If you Yoruba, then claim Yoruba nationality. At least that could be recognized as a theocratic state if you don't want to be a Moor. If you are Muslim, then claim a Muslim state to be a part of and not just be a practitioner of the religion. Because then you at least be in a position to internationally do something for somebody other than yourself. These all I see the word African associated with in the modern context is global disenfranchisement or global upper nobility of certain aspects of the African, pseudo-African populace. Now, we know there's no African country, per se, meaning that there's no country called Africa. The only one close to that is South Africa, and that technically is a district or a commonwealth that was enforced on the Zulus, right, after the Boer War. But that's another story. But traditionally, there is none. So when we talk about the different nationalities within Africa, what we need to do is look into the ancient relationships of some of these ancient tribes, like those of Mali or Ghana or Niger or the Dogon or Songhay or the Tuareg. All of these have their center around northern Africa, or where Carthage or where Phoenicia and these places were. That were really just jump-off points for them coming over here. So when the Moors seem to just pop out of nowhere in Spain, you got to remember the Moors were the inheritors of Rome, if you know your history. But because you get your history from African Americans who are descendants of Pan-Africanists, who went against what Garvey was doing, because Garvey was about bringing everybody together. He wasn't about exclusionary politics, or what we would refer to as American pluralism, because that's what these niggas is flipping on you with this pseudo-African-American liberation theology that is an aspect of what is it called? Apostolic succession, which is another Jesuit-influenced doctrine. So if you're getting into the Freemason thing, that's great, but you got to understand that the head of all of that stuff, Jesuits is running all of that. But the Vatican was officially disestablished through the International Common Law Court. And right after that, they put a new pope in there because the old one is now in jail, under house arrest. The old one in jail. The new one had an arrest warrant right after he got in. And you know, right after the arrest warrant, the next day, I see this nigga, or the next week, I see this nigga in a youth prison. I see him in a prison, kissing the feet of youth. In a sense, begging proverbial forgiveness of what? Of an age-old practice that is found a tenet within the so-called Catholic Church. So I'm not saying that all Catholics or anybody that is a Catholic is a pedophile, but I am saying that the reason why all of these Caucasian male priests, those seem to be the ones that's getting caught out there, that they come from a culture where this is how they come up there. So those old great Italian grandmothers and stuff who sent their children to seminary and all of that, this is what happened to them. But again, that's pedestry. And when you get back to the root of this all, when you watch these movies, Game of Thrones and the Borgias and all this stuff, trying to make all this shit look cute, trying to make it all look dope, what you're really seeing is the fluff piece being done. The snow job to make it look dope, like they was actually doing something of merit in that, when they were really using the theocracy as a means to control people, because this was the first time that they was actually able to come up. So when we talk about all of this current race now, this current whole thing of Moor bashing and all of that, what I'm peeping game is the fact that it's all coming from black people or people who refer to themselves black or used to. It's like, it's to the point, I don't know what to call these people anymore. It's like, okay, so you don't like the Moor, but you'll still let people call you Negro. You don't like Moor, but you'll still identify with minority, right? And African American, right? Or what? Kemite? What nation is that? What nation is Kemite? What flag is that? You got to create that. When I look at Africa, the Africa that I do the knowledge to is the stuff, it seemed like the people that was coming over here. So if I call those people Moors, or even if they call themselves that, they want to tell me now that that is a creation of the European, of the white man. But that's what African is in the modern context. If not, how could he then incorporate or hook up the word Afrikaans? So when I see Africans and the people that's getting money, I'm seeing Africans getting money. I'm seeing that. But when I see shit on TV, they look at like destitute Haitians. And look at that. Look at what they did with them. It's not everybody in Haiti that's on it like that. You have fierce nationality in Haiti. But nationality today is based upon how much money you flipping and what agreements you making and how many white people you got on your team, man. So because I say I'm a Moor, I'm somehow what? I'm whack now, or I'm not in the struggle. Like I'm not like what does that mean? Like I'm somehow putting myself above? No, I'm separating myself based upon the nation that I have discovered my ancestors descend from. I'm not saying that they didn't import Africans, so-called, over here, but I would not call the Africans they imported over here slaves. I wouldn't call them something that they weren't. I would call them prisoners of war. That's what they were, because it was a war based upon those people who didn't want to call themselves Moor no more, and those people who did. Those people want to call themselves whatever they want. The record show, man. Niggas get like niggas can say what they want, man. I grew up in a house with Badu Samba, okay, who was the ambassador to Gambia at the time. And he was going out with my grandmother, the same grandmother, the Easter Star, you know what I'm saying, getting her money. And she was getting her money with them Africans. And let me tell you, my grandmother was not the most scrupulous person in the world, okay? Not dissing her, because really, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to peep game how quick I peep it now. The way that she terrorized me and brutalized me and my cousin growing up forced me to be somebody that does the due diligence and goes all the way in when it comes to research and things. So when I'm seeing people literally come out and go out their way, that's like when you see an actress on TV and she go out her way to say that she's not black. That's how I look at these niggas with this more shit. I'm looking at them the same way you would look at somebody like Halle Berry talking about, oh, well, you know, I still love the black community. Bitch, you ain't never seen black. You ain't been black since Monsters Ball. You was barely black before that. But I understand when to use the colloquialism black in the context of what it's used for. You see what I'm saying? Therefore, I'm not dealing or coming from a perspective that I'm identifying that as myself. Okay. And then, exactly. It's only like 2 or 3 songs. It's only 2 songs. So essentially, they created a stance for us to be able. It's like he's talking to me, so I'm talking. So it becomes a situation where we wind up brutalizing and beating each other up based upon, again, what we calling each other. So when I say that this is how we fell out in the first place, why is it so hard for people to understand or even agree with? Like, we can't even agree what we want to be called or what we want each other to be called and recognized as. So in a situation like that, based upon a lot of the diatribe that I've been reading, I'm just peeping it. I'm like, wow. But then I'm also peeping game on the other side. Ain't no white people coming out saying nothing about that in a negative way. The only time the government comes out against Moors, the federal government comes out against Moors, is when these Moors do some crazy shit, like to dishonor themselves, which then proves that they're not who they say they are, dishonoring themselves by doing things like Xeroxing the Department of Justice logo and putting on identifications and selling it to people. Like, that's crazy. charging people mass amounts of money for things like writs of travel and things like that when the state government's then copyrighted the word writ of travel and all of this. So you got to get even more distinct. I don't know. It says it is. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, let's see. Let me see if everybody in the chat room can hear me now. It's on air, so I don't know what the deal is. Everybody here? Peace. Okay, everybody can hear. Okay, great. So basically what I was saying for those people who didn't hear is that there's a huge campaign now going on where people are more bashing, and it's funny that it's such a fever pitch coming from people who are referring to themselves as African and everything else. And in the process of that, I don't know why or how it's such an anathema for people or so, negative for people. Like, some of the comments I'm reading some of these black people make, man, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's borderline or is hatred. And if that's the case, why would you hate somebody for calling themselves something that don't? Why would you have such a fervent and fervent malice, you know what I'm saying, to dedicate whole posts and shit to the fact that it's not real, and all of that, to me, is like they say in Shakespeare, methinks thou dost protest too much, you know what I mean? You're doing a bit too much to show and prove to me that what you think I'm saying is not what it is, that it's this, and you're going to honor this and that. And I'm not speaking to anybody in particular, I'm speaking to everybody in general, because regardless of who or what, you can't choose one ancestor over the other. So I have no problem with the term African in the context African. You understand? Because I understand what Africa is. Northwest, Southwest Africa, North Africa. I understand all of that represents the dominions of Al-Maghreb. Excuse me, Al-Maghreb, right? Al-Aksum, Al-Sheka, Mexum, Al-Amazon. So I know what that is for me. So if you say I'm an African in that worldly context, then yeah, okay. But when it comes to setting up, doing whatever paperwork and claiming a nationality, there is no African nation or national place. Okay. So I'm not going to say that, but I do know and understand that this is a time in which we are supposed to declare who and what we are. And because there is no so-called African nation that has yet offered me citizenship, you know what I'm saying, or that I could go to and say, hey, I come from you. I come from here. So I would like to get that. That has not done that. All of the research that I've read, my ancestors was on this side of the world. So don't hate me for that fact. You see what I'm saying? And you shouldn't hate anybody else for that fact either. And just because these people happen to refer to themselves as something and did have an empire and did have a society and did found a lot of the things that the so-called Africans got put on too. That's why the Papa said don't throw away your Bibles, because there's a lot of history in there. And the main thing basically said that the dominions and the capital of the empire was over here. If you understand that, if the original inhabitants of Africa sojourned or came from the land of Canaan, but if you believe that the land of Canaan represents what is now Jerusalem, and not understanding that that place they called Jerusalem was a satellite kingdom and only became Jerusalem after 1945, you would understand that it was called a lot of things before that. It was called Jebus, it was called Salem, it was called Ariel, it was under the jurisdiction of Havilah. There's a lot of different things. But we are only taking the present maps based upon us understanding their history and their present concept, because we do not understand our true history, because the big part that's left out that a lot of your African and Pan-African scholars don't want to tell you is the fact that there is an aspect of Moorish nationality that still exists. And that when you research the Moorish government in books that deal with international law, ancestrally, it will tell you that there are no laws in the Moorish government that any person on the outside could be privy to, because each law was vested in the state of the Moor in his relationship to the emperor. But as a Moor, you have a celestial legacy as well that everybody want to just ascribe to the Dogon, like they're the only people that dealt with the stellar systems. Like they're the only Moors or the only melanated people in the world that had that science, man. Who you think preserved it? Who you think got a lot of the people who became Dogon high priests out of Kemet when things was going crazy? But because we take the history of the conqueror who just says Moors just appeared out of nowhere in the 7th century and just took over all of Europe, so much so that nobody could do nothing without them, and then all of a sudden rocked there for 800 years, and then boom, they out. You're missing a huge aspect of that if you're only looking at that place in the world as where you from. So anybody trying to limit you to one continent is trying to colonize your mind, man. They're trying to put you into a new form of intellectual slavery that's now coming from black and white slave masters working together. Ain't the Scientologists under the NOI? Ain't the NOI under the Scientologists now? Tell me I ain't saying the truth. Ain't most of the people that's kicking this knowledge or whatever is wearing aprons on Thursday and Friday nights or whenever they choose to go in there and talk nothing and help nobody but them. All I see is people trying to convince people about how great the craft is and how great and illustrious it is and how nobody really knows the secrets and how wonderful it really is and what is brought to what has it really brought to the world? What has it brought to your life? How has it kept you out of jail? How has it kept you and your family safe? How has it not broken up your family? Nothing that is done in the dark can manifest the light by itself. The strongest part of the light is the dark. Yet the dark is silent. The darkness is consciousness. And within that triple stage darkness is the recesses of the mind and the soul that allegorize itself in the context of physical allegories that become symbols that people and men and women join themselves to, that emboss themselves on the psyche, and then move everybody into the Temple of Solomon, the soul of man, that which now they have to walk through and hope not to run into the three ruffians that's going to beat them up, knock them in the head, and make them forget. Why I got to go study 35 to 50 years when I'm already born on the square? I'm already born on the square. I graduated from walking around with an apron on, which is another form of a bib. That's what you give a child. That's what you give an infant. That's what you give somebody that can't eat properly and dribbles and drops shit on themselves, meaning a minor, meaning an infant, meaning someone who is freed and accepted. You dig what I'm saying? That's not for a noble, upright Moor who's coming from an aspect of absolute nationality based upon his theocratic relationship with him or her creator. But that's just how I understand it. You dig? Therefore, I am not to impose that understanding on anybody else that don't want to understand it like that, because a lot of other Moors want to do other things. They want to be in the United States government. They want to be in Masonic lodge. They want to be Christians. They want to be whatever they could be in it. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes some whole other dugger. And then in that, all that's left now is those of us who understand it, how we understand it. So I have no problem working with anyone, so long as working with them does not in some way confer any false or illicit or imposed jurisdiction that they may or may not know that they may be agendas or agents or portals of. So again, if you want to claim a nationality, then do that. If you don't want to be an African and be a real African American, go and claim some dual citizenship with some African nation with a damn passport. Don't just be on Facebook fucking putting up pictures and stuff and talking crap about stuff you don't even know. You don't even understand. Like I said, I grew up in the house with this nigga. He didn't say nothing to me about nothing about Africa. This nigga let me watch Roots and all that shit growing up. She was with this dude for years. This dude who was Muslim bragging about him kissing the Pope ring. I wasn't even a Muslim then. I ain't even really have knowledge of self then. But I looked at that nigga at 12. I was like, wait a minute, ain't you a Muslim? Ain't you from Ghana? How you kissing the Pope ring? Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, Charlie. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. It wasn't until he seen me with a fez on. I said, oh, you want more? I said, what? You know what that is? You know what that is? He said, yeah, I know what that is. I said, but this is me now at what, 20, 23, 24? He not even with her no more. He wasn't even with her then, blessed day, because she ain't alive no more. He wasn't even with her then. I just seen him later. And he said that. So again, man, niggas be talking. And then talking to him, I'm understanding why a lot of that went down with Leopold and all of that, because he's now kicking shit to me. But he not telling me everything. But he will always tell me. He will always tell me from a child, 10 years old. I remember one day something happened, and we had to do something about black history or blah, blah, blah. And I came in, and I was talking about African kings or whatever. And he said, yeah, but you're not African. You're black. This is what he used to say. He an African diplomat. He an ambassador. He told me, no, your grandmother, y'all not African. Y'all are black. You understand? So people can say what they want, and I'm bringing it up because I want you to see how it's starting to go into, how it will go into a fever pitch after this. How you'll have people now want to come out and say this and say that, but you don't hear the white man saying it yet. Even when the news posts that they put on, they only talking about Moors that's doing shit. How you going to go claim a house and you ain't really declare your nationality properly? People want to act like they scholars and know history, but if they really were and they really investigated the 13th Amendment with the 20 sections, specifically Section 16 and 17 taken from an international perspective, they would understand what's really going on. But these niggas don't read because these niggas are African Americans, which means that they are minors, meaning they are minorities. You understand? They let these people make them foreigners to their own country. And now because you're trying to repatriate back to your original country, they want to say that that country don't exist. The white man ain't saying that, but the white man, when you read his documents, he say the first nation to ever recognize the United States was Morocco. Well, how did that happen when the Kingdom of Morocco was not even existing at the time that this happened in 1776? You tell me. You tell me how you have a whole DVD volume series about Moors with no Moors talking about nationality, birthright, and inheritance on it. You tell me how that's supposed to run. That ain't no different than them doing a movie like Cleopatra and putting Angelina Jolie in the head. It's the same thing. Only thing is because, what, she white or is different? That's the problem with these niggas and these African Americans, man. They got it twisted. So now the same person that's coming to teach them and let them know what the real deal is, the same one now they want to pick fights and find out because you got a bunch of dirty Moors out here doing bullshit. Well, guess what? The bus is dirty sometimes. Your car is dirty sometimes. But it don't be so dirty that you don't drive it to get where you got to go. It don't be so dirty. The train is filthy. But niggas ride that shit every day. Regardless to how filthy it is, regardless to how much it smells, because they still got something to do. So what I see is real grown-ups do what they got to do regardless and don't give a damn what a child say about anything. But we are in this liberation theology BS that comes out of an apostolic Jesuit succession mind control program, so much so that we're not even realizing that the Vatican itself has been formally disestablished. This is white folk doing that to them. This is white folk doing that to white folk. Let me just finish my point. Okay. So it just got to a point where these people just constantly putting out different things to just bash on you now because you want to be something else. And remember what they say, misery love company. And just like the God put on his post, he said it's Misery Day. And this was Misery Day for the Moors. This is like October 14th for them. Like Columbus Day. This is a day where they cut off so many Moors' heads and put them on pikes. This is their ancestors, they did that too. So is any surprise that you have now African Americans and Africans and Moors and dirty Moors, undeclared both, all cannibalizing each other? Because that was never allocated. Nothing ever came of that, and nobody ever had to pay for that yet. Just like the fact that nobody wants to accept the fact that we got over a lot of stuff, but we never got over crack, man. Crack got over on us. We went from making records against the shit to making records for it, to making records about moving it by the metric ton. This is how insane these African Americans are. They have turned insane because not having a national flag behind you that really represents you, that honors your true soul and ancestry, has driven you mad. So what we have to do, those people who are still in the right mind, have to allow those people to be what they are and cannibalize themselves. That's the other thing they don't like about you being a Moor, is the fact that you, as a Moor, based upon you taking responsibility for yourself, will look at somebody who's not taking responsibility for themselves and let them play themselves, for them to learn their own lesson the same way you had to. That's what a parent do. That's what an adult do. And a parent tell you one time. I tell my son one time now. It was 3. But the more stern I got with him, you see what I'm saying? Now it's 1. Now after the first time you don't hear me, now I'm gonna have to talk to you in a different way you don't want to you don't like. But you respond to that way, you see? So if you just do it how you're supposed to do it, it should be cool. But no, these Moors want to go declare houses and get $100 million homes and all this other stuff, and what, living that by yourself? You ain't no different than a white man. You ain't no different than an African. You ain't no different than a colonist. All of that is barbarism. And all of that came out of the fact that we as a people were purposely denationalized. These niggas say that you ain't had no country. You understand? They trying to say that you don't exist. These are your own people. Trying to tell you that you under some mass delusion. This is the new shit they flipping on niggas. And this is because you've been so inundated with the dirty politics and the dirty side of what Moorish science is. People have turned themselves off to get in the truth. But it makes no difference because in the end we are all held accountable for what we agreed to be a part of and do. Therefore, nobody got to be nothing that they don't want to be and do nothing they don't want to do. In the end, though, it's all going to be revealed, and you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. The elder Moore told me, he said, you know what, let them niggas talk what they want, because in the end, they all going to have to come back to us in the end. And it's the truth. So, just so you know, as Moors, when I look at that and say that, I'm talking about original people in their glory and in their higher self, even though they may be at their lowest. But if I call you that and you don't agree with that, don't get into a hissy fit the way that you see these Moors get into it when you call them black. I understand why they do that, but at the same time, in the given colloquialism of a given conversation where we just in the crib building, I understand what that is. So I don't get it. I'm not so thin-skinned that words like black nigga and these things don't apply. Or somebody uses that in the term of endearment or affection towards me, I'm going to feel offended behind that. I don't, because a word can never really offend me. It's one's actions and deeds that is going to manifest what it is, whether or not I should take offense or not. Therefore, I'm never on defense. I'm always on offense. I'm always dealing with people I'm supposed to. Therefore, I can put myself around people in situations or discussions that are lowbrow or are not going to produce anything towards spirituality, birthright, nationality, and heritage. Not really. Maybe if we roll it up like twice. So that's really what I'm saying. I'm not trying to, tell nobody to be nothing they don't want to be. But just don't hate on me. Like they say, don't hate on me because I'm beautiful. You know what I'm saying? Don't hate on me because I don't associate with certain things. I don't, I grew up with somebody who spoke Wolof, and as a child, he could have taught me. But he didn't because he told me that I was not an African, okay? And this was the ambassador of an African country. So they need to say what they want. But in my own life experience, that has not been the case. And in my adult research and going further, the only people I see that have the most to say negative about what the culture I have been about has been so-called black people, whose culture it was. So because they would rather be identified as something they're not, it just proved what, when I read the Plus lesson about 1774 and the fact that that was a day, or on 6 Chestnut Street in Philadelphia, we got together and decided, that actually was good now. We actually got together and decided that we were going to draw a line in the sand and say, no, we are Moors, or we are free nationals. So you got Moors that said, oh, well, if it was really the case, then why they still using slave names? Well, if you have an English name today, you ain't a slave. Now, I'm not talking about the 14th Amendment thing or the birth certificate thing. We know about that. But in the traditional sense, you got an English name now, and you're not a slave, because they want you to believe that the African wants you to believe that you was always victimized by the European, or that the European always meant a Caucasian person. So therefore, you never see the people that's banging on you, killing you in your own community. And so, because all of these things deteriorated, this is where eventually gangs came from. Gangs basically came out of the same place the Barbary Pirates came from, a place where the targeted Moorish males who were targeted by every society that they were under that was now in the jurisdiction of the Freemasons, meaning the Boule and the so-called Scottish Rite, so-called free white people, who is now ruling over everybody instead of the true masters. They are now working to keep 2 heels on your back. That's why in Boys in the Hood, it was the black cop that was terrorizing, but the white cop was just as guilty because he sat there and let him do it. Because he know that he's doing his job, because they are working together. So when I see brothers, black people are the only people, African Americans, whatever you want to call them, these are the only niggas in the world who will start to defecate on their leaders before their movements even get off the ground. You see? This is the type of sickness and insanity that's rampant in your community. And when people start to speak about it in a manner that's outside and just deal with the truth of it, those are. And so, it is just left for everybody to figure it out for themselves. So that's what I'm saying with everybody. We just got to support each other when we can and let people be what they want to be. As they say, render unto Caesar what is Caesar. But don't put yourself in a context to feel like you have to justify who you are, explain who you are to people who don't have your best interest in mind, man, who would rather you to be a slave, and would rather you identify with something that you're not. So when you let people call you out your name, when you let people refer to you and all of that, that's why the devil, whenever you in the courtroom with him, he always calling you out your name. He always calling you something else, because when you identify to it, that's like you as Kunta Kinte identifying to Toby. So because I identify with something that, at least in these devils' records, said that they don't have the jurisdiction over me like they have over these niggas who call themselves African. Every nation that calls itself African that's sort of pseudo-independent got a United States base in it, okay? So what that say? So who's really under the jurisdiction of who? And they can't even tell the U.S. to get out unless they nationalize, like Idi Amin. You see what I'm saying? But niggas ain't on it like that. Niggas is all for integration now. Like I said, the Scientologists and the wise hand in hand. But you never know because you're not privy to that. But you come from the place that spawned all of that. So because I spawned it all, I can't claim it? No, the only person that wouldn't want me to claim it would be a devil. So whether it's a white one, or a black one, or a melanated one, or a Chinese one, or whatever, it's still somebody trying to make me believe I'm something that I'm not. And that's a liar. I don't give a damn who it is. So, again, niggas can tell you, you know, you could be the this or this or the do to that or whatever. But true royalty, money marry money. Another black woman done married into that, and she's going to be the first Marchioness of the so-called England. The first black one in like 180 years, almost 280 years. This, again, is because the Queen of York abdicated the throne. That was Elizabeth II. I think the short. And so it becomes a situation where, again, these people are already doing it. You see your man Jay Electronic over there, he ain't worried about no album. He's trying to do what these Moors been doing, trying to marry into the courts of Europe, following the foreign gods of Europe, see what I'm saying, and establish something over there for him and his people. Same thing they all do. They join Scottish first, give Scottish right and all that first, and then they get the nods, and then they want to come out as bays, and then you don't hear from them again. Or when you do hear from them, they kind of got to be on the low because, again, you done violated your oath, man. People people don't read. Like, I've actually sat there and read one of these music contracts that Eileen was giving to these niggas, and it is horrible. But when you understand the fact that the music industry in the late 90s was inundated with a cross-marketing merger venture with the prison system, you would understand why the vehicle of rap started going more towards prison. Because the more the music was being associated or could be associated with that glorifying the gang life, the more so-called African Americans, the minorities, Hispanics, you know, whatever you want to call them, would follow suit. And look what happened. How did the African Americans stop that? Did the Rainbow Coalition stop that? Did any so-called black system of black sociology stop the inundation and the erosion of your community after they became part of the social strata, after they boycotted or bust into the system? Did anybody do anything to change that? Did it change the life of your children in your community? Are you still living in the ghetto? Yeah, you are. But I'm the problem, right? Because I claim to be a part of something that doesn't exist, right? Do you see how they are doing? This is what this is called in terms of a Hegelian dialectic. This is called cognitive dissonance. And that's what's going on in mass in Facebook. And it's being fostered by clandestine agencies and the little ops they got through these people that you think are just regular people posting up shit on Facebook. But in the end, it's an op. All part of what I told you last week, Operation Scimitar, all in effect. And every week they put in more and more emphasis on it. So now they want to deter you. They want to scare you. At the same time now, the Pope, these white people then convened an international court of international common law and convened and decreed that all of these agreements and places are disestablished. And you have the right to print up the edict in the document, go and seize it as a peace officer. You can't do it as no 14th Amendment citizen, though. I mean, you could, but the United States would just come and take it right from you. You got to be a part of something that is a stalwart to jurisdiction. Come out of Babylon, O ye children of Israel. That's what's going on, man. They suckering you back into this shit. They making you think that sovereignty and autonomy are the same thing. Sovereignty is talking about gold. When they talking about that, they talking about having gold. And you can't have that if you dealing with the United States Post Office as a customer. But again, these Moors got you thinking that the temple is the end-all to be-all, and that's going to save you. It's not. It's not. You got to realize that you are the damn temple. And none of these sheiks and these people is going to tell you that, because they have sworn oaths, too, to keep it from you and to make the temple stay exactly what it is, part and parcel. But the word parcel did not come out into the English language until the 16th century, but came in as an aspect to represent part. So part and parcel actually means the same thing, but parcel actually means a smaller part of part, a partial cell, half of something, not real. Came in the 16th century, was ushered into, or started to be, in a sense, aspect in the vernacular of everybody around the 14th. Isn't that a coincidence? When they wanted to start to parcel the lands of the Moors, the dominions of the land of Nod, the dominions of Bled El Siba, that's here. The Morocco of the farthest most west, that was peopled by the Moors, because the Moors began here in America. But they want you to focus on Spain as if those are the only people. No, those were members of that ilk who were connected again. There's a Malian influence in that too. There was Malians in there with Tariq and Tarif too, but you don't hear about them. The Malians been coming back and forth. They understand what Moors are better than anybody, because Abu Bakari came over here to build with the Moors. The Moors are the true inheritors of Rome based upon the amphitheater known as the El Dejim. Do the research on that. Or better yet, come to class. These Africans are putting themselves in, they're putting us all in positions where we are not functioning in our primary position. And all that's doing is throwing us off and making us more angry at each other. And what we're supposed to be doing is practicing love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. So, to all my people in Africa listening, you know that I'm talking to you out of love, and I'm not talking to you as savages. If you are not following the characteristics of the people that I'm talking about. You see?
And even those people, we're not talking out of a place of hate.
And even those people, I ain't talking about a place of hate, but you got to get your shit together, man. Because this thing is bigger than just you and what it is you doing for your individual family. These white people in the European nobility families is already flipping it. They already kicking the Pope out. So now they got this transitory Pope in there who had to go to jail. Again, that's why he wound up in the jail kissing the baby's feet, kissing the youth prisoner's feet, because they put out an edict for his arrest too, because he was tied up in some kidnapping shit in 1976 that they say that he was acquitted of. Who gets acquitted for kidnapping? Like who? You know what I'm saying? Like who winds up in that situation and winds up being Pope, knowing that the Jesuit and Opus Dei and these people then already created this flip to human trafficking and all of that. What about that? These are some of the things that will become more and more enlightened. You know what I mean? And those people that want to know more about that, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com, and we can build further. But for those people who, again, identify and want to take what I'm saying as like offense, like I'm trying to diss you and all that, like that's the farthest thing from my mind. But I always said that Super Heru Radio would be a place for me in particular to be able to correspond to the people about the things that I see as they're due. And that's what I'm doing.
So with that, we say thank you for tuning in tonight because we have a show to go to.
Yeah, we got to go to a show and knock this out. For those people that will be at Jazz, thanks for coming through and the support. For those people that want to get into the Wednesday class, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. For those people that want to get in contact with myself or Selena, again, you can use the same inference, houseofel@hotmail.com. Any donations that people have towards what it is we're doing to, again, get it straight, you can do so at dukeoftears@gmail.com. That's at PayPal. It's DUKEOFTIERS@hotmail.com. Excuse me, at gmail.com. And okay, you can waste money. So anybody else wants to holler at me, you could also check out our website, www.IseerTheDukeOfTears.com, as well as www.darkskull418.com. That's the world's most dangerous comic book novel. I want to thank everybody that's been purchasing it, and thank Amazon for giving us that 5-star rating. I really appreciate it, as well as, again, any donations towards that. We're seeking to expand the brand and bring out more so that way we can educate more of the populace about who we are through the mediums that they've become associated with. And also check out www.cookingmorewithless.com, as well as www.sagaasad.com. So, again, with that, we say peace, love, and light to everyone. But for those people who identify with the culture that I identify with, I want to thank you and let you know, stay strong, stay steadfast, stay away from dirty Moors. And just because there's Moors with dirty feathers, don't think that you ain't no Africans with dirty kente cloths either, or dirty Chinese, or dirty Jews, or dirty anybody. Anybody of any nationality could be dirty. But nobody is going up to these people who they know don't, in terms of a direct nation or genetic tie to something, like the state of Israel. But ain't nobody saying that they not Jews, except the real ones. So, protect ourselves and support each other. Peace to all the true and living Moors. Peace to the Prophet Noble Ali. Peace to all of the human family on earth. Peace to the God's protection, love, and light. Thank you again, Creator, for blessing us with the mind and the ability and the voice to be able to put it out. So with that, we say peace.